Hello and welcome back to the Tactics Board podcast. Today I'm joined by a very special guest. He's an analyst for Sky Sports. He's an agent. He's included in football in every way possible, basically. He does a bit of everything. It's Pythagoras. How you doing, mate?
Pleasure to be on board, mate.
Good. So obviously Pythagoras is a Man United fan, so we're going to be talking everything about the lead up to the derby, all the managerial changes, Ruben Amorim out, Michael Carrick in. There's a lot going on at Man United in the moment, and I think we have to start with Ruben Amorim. Do you think it was the right decision to get rid of him, or would you have kept him on board?
I personally would have kept him on board until the end of the season. I don't think long term he would have been the end goal manager for Manchester United. I think he had some limitations. That said, I personally don't see what we're looking to achieve by having an interim in place for the last 6 months. Like, it's not like this interim is going to set the foundations for our new style of football. I think where we were in the league, and if you look at, for example, the XG and the stuff that we were creating chances going forward, I don't think we were playing that bad that warrants the manager to get the sack. There's a lot of teams in transition this season. There's a lot of teams that have inconsistent form, bar the, say, top two teams. So I think if it was based on purely on the merit of the football this season, I didn't see enough for him to warrant getting the sack. But obviously, long-term wise, would I want Amorim in charge? No, not really.
I think my biggest issue with Amorim personally, I personally think he should have gone. I thought he should have gone quite a long time ago, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
How he used Bruno Fernandes. Like, I think you've got this guy who's a fantastic creator, probably the best chance creator in the league quite comfortably at the moment, and you're not platforming the team around him at all. You've got him playing DM where, yes, he was still playing well, he was still creating chances, but nowhere near to the maximum of his ability, I wouldn't say.
Well, that's the thing though, isn't it? Like, my point is, if you're going to get rid of a manager, get rid of him in the summer. But United have this habit where they keep their trust in the manager, which isn't good enough. And then you sack him midway through the season. And for me, when you sack a manager midway through the season, it doesn't really achieve anything, because the new manager coming in, like, what are they going to be realistically able, even the likes of Pep, Klopp, etc., and they've come in mid-season, they're not really achieved anything. It's almost taken them a bit of a while to get used to the squad. It takes time for them to implement the ideas before the team then kicks on. So it makes no real sense. So for me, I would have just kept him in, just for, he probably potentially could have even got top four. And but I'm not saying he would have, but I'm just saying there was a potential for it to do it. Whereas now, I mean, yeah, possibly new manager bounce, etc. But I don't know. I just find it foolhardy to. Why not get rid of a manager in the summer and give the new manager a chance to use the summer window to buy the players that they need?
Yeah, 100%. I think I'd agree with that. Do you think it's the right decision to get an interim in and then bring the new guy in the summer rather than just trying to bring the new guy in now?
I think it is the right. I think it's the right thing to do, only because I think the manager market in the summer is going to be so much wider. There's far more potential managers that you can get your hands on than now. So for that reason alone, I think it's a logical thing to do, which is why I said I would have kept Amorim towards the end of the season, get rid, and then you've got a whole variety of managers available in the summer.
Yeah,
is what I would.
I think I look at someone like Nagelsmann, obviously he's the Germany manager at the moment, and think, could you go and get him after the World Cup? I think he'd be a really good appointment for Man United. He's quite a big name as well. But I think as soon as you sacked Amorim, I was worried for you that you'd go and look at someone like Oliver Glasner, maybe, who I don't think's a great fit, and panic. So I think you have made the right decision. But
I was also worried about Glasner, purely because I think one of the mistakes a lot of teams are making is, just because a manager has done well at a smaller team, you've got to look at the style of football they're playing, whether it's compatible with the new set of players, and also in terms of its long-term ceiling. Of like, Glasner's approach is very much like quite compact, looking to be transitional. I look at someone like Iraola and I see similar deficiencies in a different way, where he plays such a chaotic brand of football. I think to be the manager of an elite team, you need like a consistency and a control in terms of your approach. If you're playing like basketball, football week in, week out, I don't think that's sustainable to win the big trophies. So for me, that's another manager I have a slight question mark over. My personal first choice would be someone like Luis Enrique. Now, I know he's at PSG and people are thinking, well, why would he want to leave PSG? But he's won everything there is to win at PSG. And I sometimes wonder whether he'd be hungry to, for a new project where it's in, English football where he's never been at. It's a chance to sort of, resurrect a club. I think he's someone who's got the capacity to do that. And I think he's the perfect sort of guy who's got the Barcelona DNA, which I think Manchester United have missed throughout, most of the coaches they've had. but he's also got the pragmatism and he's also got the charisma of being able to lead a big club because he's managed Barcelona, he's managed PSG. So I don't think the size of Manchester United would be too big for him.
What do you think about maybe someone like Enzo Maresca? I think it looks quite certain that he'll probably replace Pep Guardiola in the summer, but say Pep stays maybe and that doesn't happen, would you be looking at him as an option?
I would be happy with Maresca, yeah, purely because I'm quite a fan of his positional principles and stuff. I think his knowledge of the game is pretty good. I think he's shown at Chelsea that in certain games he can also adjust his tactics. So I think that's a side of his game which I think we're just touching the surface upon. I think that's something that he will continue to grow as a manager going forwards. So yeah, I think he'd be an upgrade on any manager that we've had so far.
I'd agree with that. I think something I really like about Maresca personally is how in the big games he gets it right so often. Like we look at that PSG Cup final. He was the only manager really last season who tactically outclassed Luis Enrique and undid that system. Same with Barcelona, 3-0 this season, destroyed them, 1-1 at Arsenal. I think to go down to 10 men and hold against that Arsenal team is such a good result. Like in the big games, he consistently gets it right. And I think that's a really hard thing to do. I think his deficiencies come in those smaller games, trying to break down the low blocks. But I think you could definitely pin that on the squad rather than Maresca. Whereas if he's at Man United, I think you have a bit more individual quality going forwards maybe than Chelsea at the moment.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I do think, like you said, with the low blocks, I think Maresca's slight deficiency is the rigidity in how his teams look to create chances in the final third. I think that, but with the United, because historically we've lacked structure, having that type of manager is kind of what the club needs. On the flip side, the weakness with Amorim was we were quite structured in terms of our chance creation because we had a very fixed style of playing, a fixed system. I actually thought that was a benefit, but the deficiency was that because we had quite a high field tilt, so we were playing quite high up the pitch, but the midfield structure was really poor in terms of, and you alluded to it with the Bruno Fernandes as a CM thing. As soon as we lost the ball, we would concede goals, we would lose portions of control within the game. So we'd have a 15-20 minute spell where it all went to crap basically, and then we'd concede goals. And I think with Maresca, even though I know Chelsea have conceded a lot of goals, but I think that's more down to the defender quality he's had at his disposal, especially at centre back and at a goalkeeper as well. I think United's squad of defenders is actually quite strong.
Yeah,
I think where we're lacking is we don't have many holding midfielders, and I think if someone like Maresca came in and we were able to give him a new set of, let's just say Boubacar Kamara type of player joined United. I think that with Maresca in tandem, I think that would be quite a stable looking team off the ball.
I think you've highlighted there the problem position for United definitely is that holding midfield slot. Oh my god! And with Carrick coming in, he plays the double pivot in midfield. He likes to pack the midfield. I think that's correct. I haven't watched lots of Middlesbrough. But from the bits I've seen, he'll pack the midfield quite dense. Do you think that's something that could help United at the moment with maybe that not as much quality in the midfield by getting more bodies in there?
I think in the interim, that definitely will help to a degree because you've got two complete polar opposites here. You've got Amorim, who barely put any bodies in the midfield region. And then the two guys you had there, you had Casemiro, whose legs go after 60 minutes. And then you've got Bruno Fernandes, who's covering every blade of grass, but positionally very ill-disciplined. Whereas Carrick is someone, when he first took charge of United in the 3 games that he did before taking over Borough, every game the common theme was flooding the midfield. So he had 3 men in his first game, he had 4 men in midfield in his second game, and then he had like a 4-5-1 off the ball in his third game in charge. And at Borough, he's basically used a 4-2-3-1 pretty much throughout his entire tenure there. So I think he's the type of guy who will look to get men back and be compact off the ball. So I think that will make United a bit more harder to play through from an off the ball perspective. However, the negative is that you're still reliant on player profiles, like in terms of football IQ. So it needs to be, for example, Casemiro. Yeah, you've got the football IQ there, but there needs to be, if Casemiro's legs go, who's going to be? It doesn't matter how many in football. It doesn't matter how many players you've got back. If you're still like your IQ in terms of picking up runs and stuff isn't quite there, or your legs aren't quite there, you're still going to miss out on those moments. So, for example, some of the games that when Carrick was in charge of United, Odegaard, for example, scored cutbacks. So even though we had like a 4-5-1 and we got men coming back, there was still that lack of intelligence, and there was still too much space between the defensive line and the midfield line, because we had Fred and McTominay in midfield, for example, and then they're not looking over their shoulder. Odegaard's made a run in behind, crosses come in, and he's scored from the edge of the box. And the reason why is the player profiles in that area wasn't the right profiles. So that's something we'll see if Carrick can address.
I think that's a big issue you've seen with Amorim, despite, like you say, he's not had the bodies there, but the bodies he's had there don't have that intelligence either. I think something we've seen with Bruno Fernandes especially a lot. I think there was one against Fulham a while ago where he's tracking Emil Smith-Rowe, and Smith-Rowe just runs off him, and he doesn't track the run at all. He walks into the box and scores, and that is a consistent issue we've seen with Bruno playing that position. Do you think under Carrick, Bruno gets shifted out of there? Quite probably, and maybe someone like Kobbie Mainoo comes in? Do you think Ugarte could play a lot of minutes? What do you think the midfield pairing will be for Carrick?
I think Carrick will move Bruno Fernandes slightly more forward, is my prediction. Whether he does it right away, I'm not sure, but I think by the end of the season, I'd be surprised if he still keeps Bruno in there. Just because I think Carrick, just from his interviews, but also from his team selections in the past, I think he's someone who understands the midfield region of the pitch better than Amorim. Like, he platforms players better, he profiles players better in terms of their strengths and weaknesses. So I think if he going on what I've seen from him, I'd be surprised if he doesn't look at Bruno and think this isn't a deeper lying player. Like, this is a guy who needs to be a bit more further afield. So in terms of his midfield free structure, I think Casemiro will definitely be in there, just because there's no other holding midfield profile at United. So I think Casemiro will definitely get in. I wonder whether Ugarte's got enough quality on the ball to impress a Carrick to get into that midfield. So I would probably see Mainoo coming in with Bruno. I think he will try that. The concern is off the ball, whether there's enough defensive IQ between Mainoo and Bruno to help out with Casemiro and the legs go. And if that happens, then I think it could be, for example, he starts the game with them three, and then depending on the state of the result, Ugarte comes in, or the flip way. So like, you could have Casemiro, Ugarte, Bruno, and then when the game is tight and you need a bit more quality in the ball, you bring in a Mainoo and go with 2 8s ahead of Casemiro. That could potentially happen.
Do you think there's enough athleticism in that pivot, though, with Casemiro and Mainoo, neither of whom are ground covers, really? I think that could be an issue. I think this is the problem you have, right? Every player kind of has a strength, but they've also got a major weakness. Like, Ugarte can do the physical stuff. I'd say he's pretty decent off the ball, but on the ball he is terrible. I think that's harsh.
But even off the ball, like, his positional play is really poor. So he's someone he's a great dog. So what I mean by that is he's someone who can hunt for the ball and get loads of interception and tackles in. But if there's no one behind him sweeping up, then he's just going to leave acres of ground because his football IQ isn't that high. And the problem is that every footballer will have strengths and weaknesses, but the issue with the United ones is that their strengths and weaknesses don't complement each other. And secondly, some of the weaknesses are so big, it kind of supersedes what their actual strengths are. And hence why I think United, have all the big clubs, we've had the biggest mess of a midfield for close to a decade now, because I'm so shocked that a club of that size hasn't prioritized this region of the pitch. Like, midfield is the most important area of the pitch to get right, especially in modern football. It's more important than ever to get the midfield section right. And we've been the worst club at it. And I think that's fed into why so many players come to this club and they don't reach their potential, because if you haven't given them a midfield base to work with, it just drags the rest of the team down. It makes defenders look worse, and it makes attackers look worse as well, because they're not getting... There's so much pressure on the attackers to have to finish their chances or do something out of nothing, because they know if they don't do that, then the game's going to go against you. You lose momentum, and then that's it. You're gone. Whereas if you look at Arsenal, just as an example, because they control games so often, they can have some of the most mediocre looking forwards. Let's just take Saka out of the picture, because I think he's top class, but the rest of their players, they're not that amazing. But the midfield area is so strong, it keeps them as a top 2 team in England for like close to 5-6 years.
That's something, just on the Arsenal point, I've said relentlessly. I think they need that quality left winger to bring in someone like a Barcola, and I think that takes them to the next level, because 100%. When you watch guys like Trossard, they're not bad, but they're not fantastic creators. It's just they have that immense control because they're so good out of possession in the midfield that they can constantly have so many opportunities to attack, and eventually you're going to get the GA because of so many opportunities. I don't think their conversion rate maybe is fantastic. But as well, on the Man United midfield, do you think it's a failure of the club and the board to not get a midfielder in this, like last summer? I couldn't believe you went for Benjamin Sesko when you had £80 million to spend and the midfield was so obviously a massive problem area.
It's shocking, to be honest with you. Like, how can your only target be Belieber? Like, it's like they just look at, like, for example, the highest rated player on FIFA or like Football Manager, like potential, and like they're just like, oh, we're just going to put all our eggs into that one player. Like, why have you not got like 5? Like, you're the biggest club in the world. You've got a crazy scouting network. You've got access to footage that no one else has. Like, how are you guys not outdoing, for example, like a Brighton in terms of the recruitment process? It's such a lazy club. Like, half the people in that club should have been jobs. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, it's that's why it's one of the worst run clubs pound for pound in the world. I was hoping that wasn't Sir Jim Ratcliffe coming in. What I just said. If it was, Jim, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I find it amazing. Again, where is like the number 2? Because I think City, we do well with our recruitment. Our scouting networks are really good. But what you always see with the recruitment is, say we wanted Florian Wirtz in the summer. We go after him. Oh, you don't get our guy. We've got Ryan Cherky lined up. You go after Cucurella ages ago. We don't get our guy. Someone else comes in. And it's like there's always that, not even second man lined up. There's a third, there's a fourth, there's a clear order of, and you could just go through, go bang, 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 bang. Oh, we've got our guy anyway. And the fact that Man United don't have that, I find insane, especially when there's so many elite midfield targets out there in the summer. You could have gone and got Elliot Anderson, Adam Wharton, Belieber just in the Premier League that are elite. And you look elsewhere, there's guys like Emerson at Atalanta that I think would come in and fill a hole at least. They give you some legs.
Yeah, I think it's the silly thing about it is that seasons go to waste then, because getting in the tactical profile is so important. So, for example, even if it's like your 4th choice player, but it's a necessary tactical profile for what your team needs right now, you've got to just go and do it. Like, even if it means, damn it, we've got this player now, it means we can't in the future go for that player that we really wanted. So what? Because sometimes that first choice player might end up being a flop. So, for example, you just mentioned, right, Florian Wirtz. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be a flop. I'm just saying that you brought in Cherky and he's fitting like a glove. He's actually started the season better than Wirtz has. And like, losing out on Wirtz, it's not a big deal because you've got Cherky and the team's functioning. It's doing well. It could potentially still win the Premier League. So, but imagine if you didn't bring him in, then Pep would be without that profile for his tactical system, for what he's envisioned for this season. And then he'd have to compromise massively based on what he actually wanted for his team this season. And then even someone like Pep then would suffer. So we're doing that constantly over many years. Like, I'd get it. Okay, maybe over 1 or 2 windows, you might have a blind eye to that. But how can this area of the pitch be not fixed over a long, long period of time? We're talking multiple seasons, multiple managers, and it hasn't been fixed.
I think that not going out and getting the profile maybe we need is something we're seeing with Liverpool as well at the moment. Would you say that's fair? Going and spending that mass amount of money on Isak when they've already got Ekatike. It wasn't a profile they needed when they needed to address the midfield, which is an issue we're seeing now. They needed to go and get another centre-back, which is something we're seeing now. And they could have done both of those things with that sum of money, but instead they've chased their individual talent. They've chased the player rather than the profile. And it consistently means you suffer, doesn't it?
Well, I think bang on with that. I think Liverpool there kind of moved away from a very smart data-led approach based on what their team needs to going the Galactico approach. And I always think that sets you up for failure when you go Galactico approach versus just being sensible with your money. Like, you don't need to spend huge amounts of money. You just need to team build. And it means assessing the team, what it needs right now, and just getting the right amount of players for the best value for money. That always, I think, long-term wins over just chasing your big stars. Like, I just don't agree with that approach.
I think Liverpool they've failed to replace that creativity of Trent. I think they wanted to do that by bringing in Florian Wirtz, right? But I think that's such a difficult thing to do that people don't think about, is moving away from your main creator being your right back. Your whole system's kind of built around getting him on the ball in creative areas, to now having to get Florian Wirtz on the ball, who's in a completely different position at that same volume. It means you have to completely change your tactical system. And it's not really anything I've seen people talking about. I haven't heard Trent's name really mentioned with why Liverpool are maybe not succeeding, but I think it's such a big factor.
Well, I think it's a double whammy on that. So you've got Trent, but you've also got Mo Salah declining.
Yeah.
So almost insta-aging overnight. And what that means is that if you watch Liverpool, like whenever I watch Liverpool live in person, the one thing that always struck me was that right flank is everything in terms of, like, you know, anyone that's played at any level, you'll have like a bunch of players in the team that you just naturally, when you're playing, you get the ball to, because they're the guys who run your team basically, right? And in that team, it was Mo Salah and it was Trent. So imagine, like, you've been playing for many years with those two as your key players, and they've disappeared overnight. So Mo Salah is basically a ghost. Like, he's not really Mo Salah anymore, if you get what I mean. And then there's no Trent there. And then you've got loads of new names just thrown into the lineup. So suddenly, like you mentioned, it's having to deal with brand new set of players. They're taking up brand new areas on the pitch. So, for example, you might have assumed this player is going to be here when I get the ball. So normally your muscle memory is like, okay, I'm going to receive it out the back foot. I'm going to pop it out to Trent. He's not there anymore. Okay, I'm going to ping it into Mo Salah, but he's not doing much with the ball anymore. And then there's loads of bunch of new players that you're going to have to play with. So you can imagine that's very bewildering for professional players, because the margin for error is so small at the highest level. These little, well, they're not little changes, they're big changes. So it's going to take a lot of these players, you know, time to adjust to that, as well as adjust to the pressure of playing for Liverpool, because they're coming from smaller clubs. You know, Kirk is coming from Bournemouth to Liverpool. That's a huge step. Wirtz is going from Bayer Leverkusen. Yes, they've won the title. They've been done well. But Bayer Leverkusen still isn't bloody Liverpool Football Club. So that's a new country as well, new language, new players around him. So, and a new system. So that's something he's got to get adjusted to. So there's so much adjustment going on all around that club. So, and then, you know, your core players, Salah in decline, Van Dijk in decline, a lot of issues there. So that will take time to iron out.
I think when you look at Mo Salah, do you think his decline is maybe just him not playing as well, or do you think it's a tactical thing? Because when I watched Liverpool previously, it was always everything's into Salah. Like you say, it's overly to Salah. Salah's having all the shot volume. Luis Diaz playing that false nine. You don't really have that proper striker. Whereas now when you watch them, everything's kind of into Ekatike or Isak. They're the guys they want taking the shots. Maybe Salah isn't as involved in the play. So I don't think it's completely fair to put his decline all onto him. And I feel like a lot of
it's a mixture of the two. Like, for example, even if a player is entering into decline, you can still find a way to maximize that decline, if that makes sense. So even if Salah, let's just say, isn't 10 out of 10 version of Salah, and he's, in theory, he's a 7 out of 10 Salah, you can still find a way to adjust to his new bodily profile. So, for example, let's just take Ryan Giggs for United. No longer capable of starting every game on the left wing. So then Sir Alex adjusted his position to playing in midfield and still made him a very effective member within that team, right? Now, I'm not saying Mo Salah needs to go into midfield, but I'm just saying you have to then look at what that player is now capable of and get him into positions where he's still able to do things that he's strong at whilst trying to mitigate the weaknesses. And I think him coming into this team where it was never going to be sustainable. Like what he did last year at the age he's at, like it was ridiculous. Like to expect that again the year after, especially in a league like the Premier League, it wasn't really ever going to happen, really. So there's always going to be a bit of a decline. But then you throw that into losing Trent, who's a key connection player with him. And like you mentioned, the whole change of the system of the players around him, it's like triple whammy hit in terms of Mo Salah's productivity, when really it should have been like a little bit of a hit, but instead it's been a massive hit.
Do you think they should get rid? Or?
I think they should, yeah.
I'd agree.
The reason why is he's got limited resale value going forward. So like if you're going to get rid of him this summer, get your full whack of money and focus on rebuilding for the next era. Because it makes not like, what are you going to really achieve with him if you just keep him around? Because he's going to keep entering into decline. It's going to affect your press. It's going to affect so many tactical elements going forward. And he's never really going to get better as a player. He's only ever going to get worse. So he can get better compared to this season, because this season's been an absolute, terrible season. Of course, he can get better than that. But in terms of, is he ever going to be like the Mo Salah of old? No, he's just going to continue to get worse. So a top club knows when a player's like, even if they haven't fully fallen off the cliff yet, you need to know, okay, this player's about to fall off a cliff. Let me sell him while his value is high. Use that money, spend it wisely, and then you can kickstart your next cycle of success. It's a bit like, like Haaland came in for Aguero. Right?
Yeah.
But imagine if you just held on to Aguero out of sheer loyalty
exactly.
for what he's done. Like, you would have never gone on to win the treble. So it's about being ruthless and doing it at the right time.
I think the example I were going to go for with De Bruyne to Turkey, obviously De Bruyne left on a free, but I think we could have easily kept him around. Like, he was still a fantastic player. I think in the second half of the season before, he'd put up his best like numbers per 90 ever.
Yeah.
So he's still at an insanely high level. I think you have to be ruthless to just say, you haven't got the legs anymore, let's get the next guy in.
And it's about protecting their legacy as well. Like, De Bruyne leaves a legend, not just of Man City, but he walks into my all-time 11 in the Premier League, right?
Yeah.
So he's had an impact on everyone. So it's good to see him leave with that intact, rather than him having to face being on the bench. It's like now you can go to Napoli, you can still get a lot of game time and still be important, because let's face it, Serie A is a slightly slower league. There's less pressure on him from a physical perspective, so he can still shine in that league, and everyone's a winner basically. So I think that's the right way to do things.
Yeah, 100%. Right. Let's go back to Man United now. Off on a massive tangent. We'll do. Can you see that all right?
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
right. Fantastic. Right. We'll build. Obviously, it's a new manager, Michael Carrick. So we don't really know what team he's going to put out. It's quite hard to predict and then give a decent tactical analysis of how these teams are going to go up against each other. So I think, how do you think Carrick is going to start with what personnel against Man City, and how do you think he's going to set up?
So I would think Casemiro gets into that midfield. So for me, he'd be a shoe-in. So he gets in for either Mainu or Ugarte. We'll say Ugarte for now. I reckon he'll bring Mainu in to the side. Let's just take the rest of the team. Dalot, Ligt, Martinez. I'm just checking your other. Yes, I think that seems fairly like what he would probably go for. So that makes sense from a City perspective. I trust you know better than I do. So I don't think Semenyo will probably start. He'll probably come off the bench, won't he?
I think so. He's played quite a lot of minutes recently.
So that's pretty much how I see it being lined up, to be fair.
Do you think, just on Lenny Yoro, do you think this shift to a back two could harm his development a bit? Just because I think Martinez is a great centre-back for Carrick, would you say, with his ability on the ball? So do you think Yoro could get fewer minutes than he has been, and that could harm his development?
So the thing is, he'll get fewer minutes, but will it mean less quality minutes? Because sometimes getting more minutes isn't necessarily the best thing for your development. And the reason why I say that is Yoro's big weakness here was defending in wide areas one-on-one. Like, he got burnt for pace quite a few times. Like, his agility when he's exposed in wide areas isn't the best. But some of his best performances have come when he's in a back four, he's in a central region of the pitch, when he's got wide defenders around him, and he just has to focus on the central stuff. So it could, in theory, be that, for example, let's just say De Ligt gets injured and then he comes into the team into a back four. That could actually long-term be the best thing for a Yoro. So I think I wouldn't write off his chances under Carrick. I think it may be that long-term getting rid of Amorim is probably the best thing for Yoro.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting. Point of the minutes, maybe not more. I think we've seen that with something like Phil Foden, right? I think when he was coming through, he wasn't playing maybe as much as people would want him to because he was so good. But now we've seen that's kind of worked out because he has not the tiredness, but he's not fatigued going into his prime years. He can still play. Where I think what we see with a lot of young players now is they play way too many minutes when they're young, and then you start to see them decline earlier than maybe they should.
I also think they end up picking up bad habits by being played out of position. Because some people say, like, if you play young players like in a variety of positions, it teaches them, how, like, a 360 vision of the pitch, and that's true. However, if you take it too far, where they're constantly playing in the wrong position, it almost, they forget what their strengths are because they're being played out of position, and that can sometimes harm their development as well. So I think with Yoro, we were seeing him played out wide a lot, and we were seeing him get destroyed a lot as well. And I think that harmed his confidence because a fully confident Yaro is a different player to a Yaro who's playing in a more hesitant manner.
Right. How do you think Carrick is going to set up then tactically? Do you expect to see like a lower block in this game and try and have that pressure and then counter attack? Or
yeah, that's exactly how I see it. So I think off the ball, you're going to see United drop back into a 4-5-1 with everyone back, including the wingers. Wingers will double up. And I think Fernandes will come back like that. And I think Seshko will be left isolated up top, is how I see it off the ball. So yeah, I'll let you get it into place there.
Probably looking at something like this then for the majority of the game. I think a really interesting battle here is Seshko, because he's so key. If you're going to set up so defensively, he needs to win this battle with Kushnov or with Max Lane, whoever he chooses to go up against. And I think that's, if he's up against Diaz or Gvardiol, which he was at the start of the season when we beat you 3-0, you look at that and think he'll probably lose that battle, which he did. But I think he's got a real chance against someone like Max Lane or Kushnov, who aren't the biggest players, to be able to hold up the ball effectively, to be able to run in behind maybe.
The other thing is the form of Seshko, because he scored a few goals now, his confidence is pretty high at the moment. So you're talking about Seshko earlier on in the season who wasn't as confident, and it's taken him a long while to try and get his link-up play, get his goals. So I'd say the last few games he's been a lot more alert and a lot more making the ball stick. So I think he's going to have to put in a hell of a performance if United are doing this, because he's going to be isolated. So he needs to hold up the ball and bring the others into play on the counter-attack. Now, the other thing to note with Carrick, though, is whilst he does I'd predict that he does this, he is quite, he likes his teams to play forward very quickly. So they're vertical. So they're going to move from defense to attack quite quickly. And he likes his fullbacks to fly forward, at least one of them. So I wouldn't be surprised if Dorgu, for example, operates quite high in this game, like once we've got the ball, and Cunha's tucking in. So that would be my prediction. I think Dalot probably not as high up the pitch, but I think Dorgu will fly forward if he does start.
Yeah, I think if Dorgu does do that, which I think is quite likely, I wouldn't be surprised if we did see Semenyo in this game starting, not over Cherki, maybe someone like, it probably would be Cherki actually, but maybe someone like Bernardo Silva, Foden, any of these guys could come out for Semenyo, just because of what he gives you out of possession. He's so good. He's made such a difference already. Last night against Newcastle, I thought he was amazing in what he gives you in the press. And if Dorgu's flying forward, you want someone who's going to track that run effectively and be solid in the duels when they get back. You need an athlete, really. And Cherki's not going to do that for how good he is on the ball. So maybe that's something we see Guardiola do.
I think that's a good point. And I also think, funny enough, if Semenyo, let's just say he's tracking back most of the time, but the odd time he gambles, right? So Dorgu go high up the pitch. Now imagine if that ball finds itself to a Semenyo running into a vacated space where Dorgu isn't there. That could be really dangerous for United, especially if you look at let's just say the left centre mid area. If, say, Mainu has to pull out wide to cover for a Dorgu, I think Semenyo takes Mainu all day long, one-on-one. So that's something United need to be mindful of.
Yeah. I think this is another key battle. If we look over to the United's right-hand side, it's Doku up against Diogo Dalot. I think Doku will fancy himself there. So it's be so key for United that Mbeumo is proactive defensively, which is something he does quite well, I think, when I've watched United. But that you are making this a 2v1 consistently, because if Doku can start winning that battle like he did against Liverpool, we can see how dangerous he can be.
The thing with Dalot is he's the most frustrating player on the planet. So, I'll be honest, I don't rate Dalot, but the amount of times I've seen him in a big game go up against like an elite winger and somehow pocket them, and then you think, how has he done that? And then the next game he's up against an average winger and he's totally useless again. So I just don't know what to expect from Dalot. He might end up pocketing Doku. You just don't know. He's that type of guy because he's got the athletic profile. He can keep up with the best wingers, but he's got a really low football IQ. So he could also have a complete mare and be the complete source of chaos for United. So I just don't know what to predict from that. But I agreed. It'd be helpful if Mbeumo gets back and helps him out.
I think that athletic profile is something you absolutely need against Doku with how athletic Doku is. Because I'd say Doku not as his football IQ again isn't the highest, so they're probably quite similar in that respect. If they're both players that maybe rely on that athleticism a bit, so that could counter out maybe. Because when we looked at Doku's best performance was by far when he was coming inside up against Kanate consistently in those 1v1s, and because Kanate isn't the most athletic player, he doesn't compete with Doku there at all. Doku was consistently beating him, consistently getting past him, but when he does, when he's in those areas, normally he isn't the most clinical.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
So maybe we see Semenyo instead come over to the left and then Cherki start here. Because I think Semenyo is probably a bit more intelligent in his movement than Doku.
Yeah. That could also be, I mean, that's even more dangerous in terms of, like, I can't see how Dalot competes with Semenyo, even if he has a good game. I think Semenyo tears him all day long. But I think because it's a big Premier League game, I think Pep most likely would probably go with Doku and Cherki and then bring him off the bench, I think. But I don't know. You can never predict what Pep's going to do.
I think you can this season for once. Pep Roulette has completely died now.
No, that's true. Now he's got a new toy to play with. So,
but no, I think getting Bruno Fernandes on the ball. You talked earlier about how Carrick will want to play vertically and quickly.
Yeah.
So, do you think we could see more of him setting up maybe in like a 4-4-1 kind of thing with Bruno just slightly higher, and then when you win the ball, you can just go bang, get Bruno on the ball here, and then you've got Sesko running in behind.
Yeah. No, I definitely see that happening. I think Bruno's going to act as like the engash, like the hook. So as soon as, say, that ball's fed into Bruno, that's the trigger for like Cunha to fly forward, Mbeumo to fly forward, Dorgu to fly forward, Dalot potentially or in support, Seshko making runs in behind. So I think as soon as that ball's played into Bruno, Bruno's got to hold on to that ball. And I think that's where Mainu potentially is quite key, because let's just say Rodri pins himself against a Bruno there, and Bruno just plays that quick one-touch pass back into a Mainu. Mainu's got the history of when he's played against Man City, he's played well against Man City because he's got the technical ability to beat the press. So let's just say there's a second wave of press like Bernardo Silva, etc., trying to get onto Mainu. Mainu can wriggle free and then play that ball into the likes of Cunha and Mbeumo, and then they use their athleticism to drive forward and get United out of that defensive shape into a more attacking region of the pitch.
I think these wide spaces are going to be key. They always are against us because we do leave them exposed. It's just how we play. It's a weakness of the system. But Cunha making these runs, Dorgu making those runs, and Mbeumo into here, they're going to be the runs that are really, really dangerous, I think. Because I back Sesko, as athletic as he is and dangerous he can be in behind. I think Kushnov is also such an athletic player. I kind of back him to deal with that. But like if it's Max Lane, he's been fantastic, but he's not going to keep up with Brian Mbeumo. Same with Nunes on this side. Is he going to keep up with Cunha and Dorgu, especially if Cherki's not tracking back as much? You're then reliant on Bernardo Silva. I could see these areas quickly on transition with maybe a switch into here, being really, really dangerous for United.
One thing that's interesting we haven't touched upon is that United under Amorim always had a good first 15 minutes where they were still on the front foot. Be interesting to see what Carrick does there. Like, does he just sit in from the start? Does he try and use the crowd or whatever for the first 15 minutes to really go for it? That'd be interesting to see.
Yeah,
I do think obviously for the majority game this will be the shape, but I don't know what to expect for that first 15 minutes.
I think that theme of teams like going for it, being really intense for the first 15 minutes is something we've seen quite a lot of teams do this season. It seems to be a bit of a theme. I think Chelsea have done it quite a lot. Newcastle, I remember the first 15 minutes of that Chelsea-Newcastle game was just insane because both teams really wanted to impose themselves on the other, be really aggressive in the press, proactive, and then you kind of get 20 minutes in and it completely dies down. I think the risk of doing that is if you don't create chances, you don't get that momentum from that first 15 minutes, you've then exerted so much energy for no reason that you're then allowing the opposition to come onto you in a more...
Well, that's been the perennial weakness of Manchester United because we don't really have the legs. So once we lose or we fail to achieve what we set out to achieve in that opening spell, the legs go and then we start getting picked off.
I think it is definitely high risk, but it's whether that risk is worth it. In a game like this, where you probably, I think you have to take risks really if you want to win as the weaker side. Maybe it's something he does opt for.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Martinez does start this game as well, just in regards to trying to deal with a physical profile like Erling Haaland in the box? Maybe Yoro's the more physical option?
The thing is, because of Martinez's leadership profile within that squad, I can't see how he doesn't start.
Yeah.
So, and I also think De Ligt will probably be tasked with manhandling Haaland, with Martinez probably like sweeping, doing more of the sweeper stuff. It'd be interesting to see whether Haaland obviously pins himself against Lissandro and tries to get away from De Ligt.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how I see it. The thing with Yoro is, I'm not sure he's in the type of form at the moment where you throw him into a Manchester derby. Like, he's not been in great form. Where's Aiden Heaven's injured, isn't he? So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's been really impressive actually, Aiden Heaven. I've really liked him when in the few times I've watched him. But with you talked about not having the legs maybe to press straight away. I think something else, and another reason why I don't think you will have that aggressive first 10 minutes, is that the fact that you have to then deal with Erling Haaland 1v1 and Doku 1v1 at the same time.
And yeah, if you want to set that all up. Additionally, because Carrick is quite a pragmatist in terms of his profiling of tactics and the game, I also don't think he'll be naive enough to do that.
Yeah, if we've got so much a bit like this with Foden dropping in there as well.
Yeah,
I don't really know how United press. Is it a 4-4-2 normally? Would you expect?
Well, it's going to be different because of the new system and the new manager.
Obviously.
Probably would be a 4-4-2, I'd suspect.
It's just say something a bit like that.
Yeah. So in theory, if they were to press, is what we're talking about here. Yeah.
You're looking at this. Dogu would maybe jump. You to get this shifting across, but then you've got that's such a risky battle with Haaland, and to have that threat of Doku going in behind. I think what we saw against Sunderland when we played them was they could deal with it in the first half because they were winning that 1v1 battle with Haaland. But as soon as Doku came on as well, and the threat of Doku was there, with Rodri on the pitch as well, you have so much technical ability in the middle. When we were playing through the press, the threat of Doku, especially making that running behind, is just way too high to warrant pressing high. So we saw them drop very quickly back into the low block, which I think is something Man United will do. I can't see this really aggressive press from the start.
And even if they did start like that, I can't see them sustaining it beyond the first 15. So yeah, I think in theory, like by the end of the game, you're definitely not going to see this.
Yeah, I think this is a good opportunity for United, though, with the defensive injuries we have. And you look at Mbeumo coming inside up against Max Alain, Sesko versus Kushnov, Cunha in these spaces as well. I think there's definitely scope for you to create chances, score goals and hurt us.
Yeah, no, look, the thing is, with a new manager bounce, new manager coming in, Manchester derby, a manager that wasn't super popular, I'd say, with the players going out, there's going to be an uplift, like in terms of intensity and performance. So I don't think City are facing us at the right time. So you could easily see United doing something here. But at the same time, City are City. They've got a lot to play for at the moment. They've got, chasing on the heels of Arsenal. So their motivation level is going to be really high as well. So it's a really intriguing matchup here because both teams are going to be very committed. So I expect quite a fiery, feisty one.
I think Semenyo will be key in this coming off the bench. I just think introducing that athleticism, so with 20 minutes to go, maybe Cherky, if it's the game's even, let's say at 60, Semenyo comes on, Cherki moves into a central area. That is such a threat off that right side when Dorgu's maybe a bit fatigued from going up and down constantly.
Yeah.
And you bring on a 1v1 dribbler, someone athletic as Semenyo. I struggle to see how Dorgu would deal with that.
I think Dorgu's got great athleticism as well. So that's a really good matchup from an athletic point of view. Like Dorgu, he's a beast. Like he can keep up with anyone. To be fair, United have two quite athletic fullbacks, but I think where United could struggle is like, let's just say Dorgu is not letting Semenyo get past him one-on-one. Let's just say in theory that happens.
Yeah.
What City have is they have wingers who know how to use the ball intelligently. So like Semenyo could suck in a Dorgu and then play in a Cherki who gets in behind that midfield pivot. And then you're in trouble, because I think that's where City can catch United. I remember, for example, Jack Grealish once, like, was it the Cup semi-final? I can't remember. But, Wan-Bissaka had him tied up for like large spells. And then suddenly Grealish just starts using his passing game to dismantle Wan-Bissaka. And then we just got wrecked because we were playing a man-to-man game. But suddenly you guys just realized, wait, if we just pass the ball around, the man-to-man situation gets bypassed. And I think City have that in them to do that.
Yeah, I think maybe someone who could have a big impact in a game like that is Ryan Aït-Nouri. And we haven't really seen a lot of him. But if the game is going in the rhythm of United are sat back, not threatening too much on the counter-attack, I could see Nico O'Reilly coming off at a similar time to maybe Semenyo comes on and we introduce Aït-Nouri into the game. Because we saw against Newcastle, he's so good in those advanced areas, such a technical player. And I think he interacts really well with these central players like Cherki and Foden in the tight spaces.
Yeah. I think the danger is, though, I think United's counter-attack ability down their right flank, even if, say, an Mbeumo came off, you've got Ahmad coming on. I think it's a big risk for City. Like if they allowed those two players to go up against a fullback who can be hit and miss defensively. I think that would be interesting. I think he'd have to come on when, for example, United have completely run out of legs, can't really get the ball forward, really, really pinned in our own third. Then I think he'd be a good profile to bring on.
Yeah, that's why I can't see him starting the game, because he is not a liability defensively. I think that's a bit harsh, but he can be so Marmite sometimes. Again, like Dalot, sometimes he can be fantastic, and then other times he can be just awful, which is why I don't think we've seen a lot of him, because Pep likes those consistent performers.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see more of Aït-Nouri going forwards. I think he's a really good profile.
No, he's super technical
as well.
Yeah, super technical.
Again, a battle like this on the left as well, Cunha versus Nunes. I think Cunha has that for me.
It's an interesting one because Cunha, most of his work comes best in the left half space. So as a pure winger, he's not really going to cause that much damage, like in the like a full-on sort of like Doku type running someone down the touchline type of thing. Like, he can do that burst, but he's ultimately going to want to cut back onto his right foot and drive into central regions. So I think the interesting thing will be who takes care of Dorgu, because I think Dorgu's going to be the guy providing the width. So I think Nunes, I suspect, will tuck in like you've just done there.
That's why I really wouldn't be surprised if Semenyo started the game for that reason. Just because what he gives you, I think Cherki is a way better player on the ball. He's more creative. I do think we struggle to create without Cherki on the pitch a lot, but he's also such a liability defensively. We've seen Bernardo Silva basically babysitting him this season defensively, following him around everywhere he goes.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that liability doesn't become a problem. And I don't think you can afford to do that against such a counter-attacking team like United. I think the lower risk strategy here would be to start with Semenyo to plug that defensive hole and then bring Cherki on later in the game to make an impact.
Be interesting. Like I said, it defines Pep's approach. Like, is he gonna focus on the opponent's strengths, or is he just gonna focus on his team's strengths, which is like, let's just dominate the ball and play super fluid football? So it'd be interesting. Be interesting how he approaches this.
Because especially with someone like Foden as well, who hasn't been in great form recently, I'm not sure if this is really a game for him, which sounds ridiculous because he always scores. He's fantastic in derbies, but in terms of like how his profile lines up, if it is a game a bit like this where you're around the box, I don't think Foden is a creative 10. People kind of profile him as. For me, he's more of a goal scorer. He's a guy who's going to crash the box. And if you've got Bernardo Silva starting too, I think is also pretty good at doing that. Do you want both of them? For me, I'd rather have a creative player in there. So maybe we could see Cherky start centrally for the first time instead of Foden.
It's a big call to drop a Foden, isn't it, for a big game?
Massive call. I don't think it'll happen, but
yeah, no, I can see your logic. Like your logic makes sense. And Cherky, obviously, he's played well against United in the past as well when he was in his previous club, and it makes sense what you're saying. Like, I guess the benefit of a Foden in there is that, let's just say United at some stage do get caught a little bit higher up. Like, for example, when we said United win the ball and they're looking to counter-attack quickly.
Yeah.
Well, imagine they're looking to counter-attack quickly, but they misplace a pass. Then suddenly their midfield line is a bit too high and there's a big space between the defense and the midfield. Foden's up the pace to just leave that pair of Mainu and Casemiro behind. So there's always that possibility as well of happening.
I think the guy that would come out ideally is Bernardo Silva, as good as he is, and I think he does so many things on the pitch that most people don't see, which is why he does get scapegoated a lot. But it would be interesting to see Pep just really go for it in a game, take the handbrake off a bit, take Bernardo Silva out, and just go Semenyo, Foden, Cherky, Doku, Haaland, because that is such a dangerous front five around the box.
What's your thoughts on Rodri then, from a fitness perspective? Like, could he handle like being that sole pivot at this? Like, has he come back fully like Rodri, or does he still need a bit of time in terms of pitch coverage?
I don't think he's not Rodri before the injury, but I think he's looked a lot better than I thought he would. I thought he'd be a bit sluggish on the ball. Like when he came back in the Club World Cup straight after the ACL, he looked really sluggish on the ball, was misplacing loads of passes, and you kind of thought, is he ever going to be the same? But in his on the ball work, he's been Rodri, really. He's been fantastic. But the issues are off the ball. Has he got the legs now to cover all this space if you did that? Probably not.
Yeah, I think that's the risk, isn't it? Because I think if you had like literally like a prime Rodri in terms of his fitness,
you could 100%.
I could definitely see Pep willing to take that risk. Whereas I'm a bit unsure at that moment whether Pep's brave enough to pull that off with Rodri at the base. But I'd love to. Obviously, just as a pure football perspective, I'd love to see it, just to see that team balling out.
That would be unreal. I think something I really want to see going forward is maybe Rodri play more as an 8 than a 6. So I think he's got Zispoms. I don't know if you know Zispoms. He's an American guy on TikTok. He did a video talking about how Rodri's probably closer to the profile of someone like Xavi than he is a Busquets, which I think is a bit of a rogue call, but I'd agree with it, which is why I'd love to see Rodri play as an 8 and just have that less defensive ability, because I think he's such a creative player in and around the box, and it's maybe a part of his game that isn't talked about as much. But
he's an all-round player, Rodri.
Areas.
Yeah, I wouldn't say Rodri. I think Xavi's a different profile to a Rodri. I'd say Rodri is someone who's more than just a 6. So he's like so I don't know if you ever watched like a Redondo play.
That's too old for me, man.
But Redondo is a player who would be the pivot, but then at the same time, once that first pass is played, he then breaks out into the 8 region, and then you can also score a goal here and there as well. And I think Rodri is that type of profile where he can pick it up at 6, but then he can also break forward as well. So he's not pure Busquets. Busquets would just sit in the pocket in the pivot.
Yeah,
I think he can break forward. I think the difference between him and Xavi, though, is Xavi's a pure, like what I call a game controller type. Like he's racking up close to 100. He was racking up more than 100 passes every single game, just in terms of his sheer game control. Whereas I think Rodri's at his best when, dabble in a bit of game controlling, but then it's plus he needs that sort of double pivot structure, and then that can free him up to, when John Stones was next to him, that's when he was at his best, because John Stones could then sometimes take care of that as well, and then that frees him up to come forward a little bit. It's quite a unique profile, Rodri. You can't really pigeonhole him in a certain way. But
I think Redondo was a good comparison there, because I'd love to see him just have that more freedom to go forwards, and Nico let's maybe just hold it. At the same time, I think Nico Gonzalez is probably more of an 8 than a 6 as well. He's got creative ability going forwards too. So then you could have Rodri, and Nico goes forwards. I think it'd just free them up so much because at the moment,
I think it gives him more longevity as well. Gives Rodri a bit of longevity because playing in that disciplined role on his own, especially in theory, if let's just say his legs aren't quite there yet, it's a lot of pressure to manage that transition if your team loses the ball. Whereas being allowed to just kind of play at your own pace, like if I want to bomb forward, I can. If I have to defend, I will. But I've got another guy there next to me doing the exact same things. It does help that player out, I think.
Especially in a game like this, where I'd say most of United's threats are quite central players. Like Mbeumo and Cunha they're going to want to run central, pick up spaces in the half spaces. They're not guys that are going to make this run out wide like other teams maybe would and really try and expose this space.
I mean, Mbeumo will
having that extra body in there.
Yeah, I mean, Mbeumo will want to get wide, but ultimately he's going to want to shift back onto his left. So even if he does make that wide run, when it gets to the box, he's going to want to chop in onto his left into that right half space. And that's where the beauty of the double pivot is, that you've got two players blocking those half spaces.
I think long term as well, it's kind of natural that eventually I think this has to become a reality. Because just when you look at all the top teams around Europe now, I think the game is so transitional and physical recently that you almost need a double pivot. Like PSG, they've got Vitinha and Joe Neves. Arsenal, who are probably the best team in the world at the moment for me, they've got Rice and Zubimendi. Barcelona, Pedri, Frankie de Jong. Every elite team is playing with a 2. And I think what we've seen this season a lot is we're just getting exposed a bit too often, only having this one midfielder. It's a bit too easy to play around when you want to play vertically and quickly. You used to get away with it because I don't think football was as transitional, but in the modern game, I just don't think it's possible unless you've got like an absolute peak Rodri to get away with a single pivot.
I think it's that, but also like the defensive profiles of a lot of big teams are quite weak at the moment. Like there's not many, apart from Arsenal, and even Arsenal, funnily enough, they've got the centre-back pairing probably to pull off a single pivot, but Arteta is so defensively minded that he doesn't want to take any risks. But so many other clubs are really weak in the centre-back department, so they need that extra layer of protection. Like you look at, for example, Real Madrid, Huijsen's like a young defender, not really tested. Rudiger, all of these type of centre-backs, they're way over the hill. You've got Asensio, who's a madman. So, you look at Barca, again, a lot of average centre-backs at that club, in my opinion. You look at all across the spectrum, there's a lot of teams with no peak prime centre-backs. So it makes sense that the double pivots come into fashion because they need that extra layer of protection.
Yeah, I think especially at the moment with Diaz and Gvardiol out, we fall into that category as well. I think Kushnov has the potential to be an elite centre-back just because of how dominant he is physically. But at the moment, he's still quite rash at times. He jumps into challenges maybe where he shouldn't. His IQ, I don't think is really there yet. So I think we need that extra protection at the moment, man. With Max Alane, who has been amazing too, but he's so inexperienced. I think it's almost crazy to try and get Rodri or Nico G, whoever he goes with, to cover all this space all by himself.
Agreed. I'd agree with that.
I mean, last night against Newcastle, it was neither of them. You put Nico Riley in the pivot and just said, play there by yourself as well. And what we saw repeatedly in the first 15 minutes was just this ball out wide. Maybe Nunes gets beat and Kushnov just diving in, and then Nico Riley cannot cover this mass ground. Whereas if you had another player in there, I don't think those chances are maybe created. And it comes at the detriment of creating chances yourself, right? If you have one less body here, is Cherki going to be as effective without Foden right next to him, or Bernardo? Probably not. But I think you're more secure defensively, which for me is the more important part of the game.
I think particularly because at the start of the game, you're still trying to feel out the opposition. So it's that tension to push and pull in terms of, do we put more balance towards the attacking side or the defensive side? But generally, if you use that first, especially if you're playing away from home, you feel out the team, the opposition, what they're doing, and then you can always just change it to tweak that balance to a more aggressive setup against tiring legs.
That's what I mean. But you'd rather start with the low risk strategy, I think, because not scoring a goal, I think, is a lot less damaging than conceding 2 goals. Yeah. Or even conceding 1 goal. Which is why I think Arsenal are probably the best team in the league, because Arteta is so defensive-minded. They're so low risk.
Yeah.
And while it's not exciting and he gets a lot of stick for it not being exciting, it's so effective because they're never going to be chasing games.
Well, I think ultimately with them, because they're able to. So you mentioned like when you're more defensive, you're not going to be creating as much. But because they're able to create through set pieces, it's like they've found a way to keep their defensive base whilst also creating goals from set pieces. So it's like a win-win.
That is another threat Man United have as well. I think you're the best team in the league for set pieces statistically this season. Is that correct?
Ruben Amorim, well, it's been much has been said about him, sort of like not copying Arteta's tactics, but appreciating the finer art of set pieces this season. So we've definitely been a lot more effective. I think with De Ligt out, that was we took a hit there, but with him back in the team, Casemiro, someone who's always able to pop up with big goals from set pieces as well. So those two are the two main men that you want to try and take out, I think, if you want to avoid conceding goals from set pieces.
And in a game like this as well, where maybe set pieces are going to be some of your better chances to score, I don't think you're going to have lots of control. Maybe it is key to start Casemiro instead of an Ugarte because of the threat he gives you from them.
100%. Yeah, I believe so.
Especially because I think we're quite a weak set piece team as well at the moment. I'd say Erling Haaland's obviously a big threat from them, Semenyo too. But when you look at the back, we haven't got Diaz there. We haven't got Gvardiol there, who are normally some of our key defenders from them. Kushnov and Elaine, I don't think they're the most aerially dominant players ever. So you look at the
threats you have. Capable in the air.
Sesko, Casemiro, De Ligt. There's threats all across the pitch, really, from those set pieces that you can capitalize on.
I think it comes down to the quality of delivery, and I think if Bruno can get those balls in, Bumo can put those crosses in, I think definitely there's a big potential there. I think Donnarumma is going to have a big game in terms of coming for crosses and stuff, I think, from set pieces.
Well, that's another point as well. Donnarumma is so poor at corners. I think it's a real weakness of his, coming out and claiming those crosses.
Despite his
never really confident with it. He flaps a bit.
Yeah.
So I think if you stick like Acuna on Donnarumma, he's never gonna come out and try and claim it and Cunha will bully him really. And then you get your free headers in and around the 6-yard box for Sesko, for Casemiro or whatever. It's something that I think you'll be really dangerous from.
I think it plays into the whole strategy. I think the overall theme, which is I think Carrick will look to be quite compact off the ball, look to be vertical when we've got the ball, and I think snatch chances when we can get it. And I think set pieces plays a role within that sort of game snatching type of strategy.
Right. Do you think United will win this game then? What do you reckon for a prediction?
I think they're capable of winning it. It's a tough one. I can see United winning it just based on the matchups, based on the fact that you've got a lot of big players missing from the central regions. And I think the new manager bounce aspect as well is always underrated. I could see United winning it. I really could. I might go for a 2-2 draw.
I was going to say a 2-2 draw as well. I think maybe like we go 2-1 up, and then I could just see a Casemiro header from a corner in like the 87th minute.
Yeah,
that's niche.
No, I get that.
There you go.
I feel that.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for coming on, mate. I think
no worries. The reason why I need to shoot off is I've got to record the Middlesbrough segment for Sky Sports on Carrick. So I need to do my deep dive on Middlesbrough for the next few hours. So wish me luck on that.